It's a tough deal to follow paid broadcasters like Jackie and Sam when all you are is a sort of dim-witted scribbler, but here we go. There's a lyric by the songwriter Chris Christopherson that includes the line, "Heroes happen when you need them." I can't think of a more appropriate way to sum up the impact that our next inductee had on modified racing in the Northeast and especially New England. Let's reflect on the winter of 1981-82. There was a serious changing of the guard underway. Ronnie Bouchard had just finished his Rookie of the Year season in the Cup Series. Jeff Bodine had moved south to chase his own superspeedway dreams. Steady Eddie Flemke was semi-retired. Bugsy Stevens had been through a couple of tough seasons and would soon be on the sidelines with a broken back. Georgie Summers and Leo Cleary still had a few big days left, but both were winding down their great careers. New Yorkers Maynard Troyer and Jerry Cook had been making fewer trips to New England than they once had. And Richie Evans, who in recent seasons had been almost a regular at the Stafford Motor Speedway, was upset with the new tire rule the track implemented and made it clear that he'd be visiting New England less often in 1982. You add up all those names, or rather subtract all those names, and you're talking about a serious dimming of star power. Modified racing in this area badly needed a new name. Then, at the dawn of the 82 season, we got one. Down in Florida during Speed Weeks, Long Island's Greg Sachs, driving for a brand new team owned by his friend Ernie Wilsberg, won 6 of the 8 races in the World Series of Asphalt Racing at New Smyrna Speedway. A month later in March, Greg won the modified portion of the Dogwood 500 at Martinsville. By now, fans and racers alike were buzzing. Come April, Sachs brought that buzz to New England, specifically to Connecticut, where he won the Icebreaker at Thompson Speedway and the Spring Sizzler at Stafford. By the time that 82 season was over, Greg Sachs and the Wilsberg 5 had started 38 races. They won 28 of them. His big victories outside this region included the Budweiser 200 at Oswego and the Race of Champions at Pocono. But since this is a New England Hall of Fame, we'll note that in September, Sachs won both the Labor Day 200 at Stafford and the Thompson 300. That Stafford 200 was Greg's 11th win of the season at that one racetrack alone. And not surprisingly, he was crowned the track champion. He absolutely lit up the season from Maine to Florida. That's the year people remember. That's the year that led to so many of the great things that followed, up to and including this Hall of Fame induction. But you can't talk about Greg Sachs in New England without mentioning a couple of other special days, including one a bit earlier that changed everything for him. Greg had been running his own modifieds for several years, those beautiful blue number 18X Pintos. And he'd done some winning close to home at Riverhead, and even more at a place that so many of us miss, good old Islip Speedway. And he'd had some electrifying runs in the Dogleg 200 at Trenton and in the Race of Champions at Pocono, performances that didn't give him the results that he deserved, but made a lot of people take notice. One of the people taking notice was Maynard Troyer. And when one of Troyer's chassis customers, Lee Allard, needed a driver for the 1980 season, Maynard recommended Sachs. Allard listened, which turned out to be a wise decision. Because in the spring of 1980, Sachs came for the very first time to the old Westboro Speedway outside Worcester to run the Allard 66 in a race called the Busch Beer 100. At day's end, he stood in victory lane. It was not only his first feature win in New England, but also his first outside Long Island. They gathered the top 4 finishers in victory lane that day to hand out jackets and plaques, and Greg was certainly in fine company. Second, third, and fourth were Richie Evans, Bugs Stevens, and Jerry Cook. In other words, every NASCAR modified champion dating back to 1967, with the exception of the 1980 champ, the late Fred DeSero. Incidentally, that race was promoted by Dick Williams, who was honored earlier today. With that one victory, Greg Sachs was off and running. That autumn, aboard the white 41 Pinto owned by Pennsylvania's Cal Smales, Sachs won his first Bud 200 at Oswego. A year later, in 1981, the same combination was a winner in the season-ending World Series at Thompson. Which brings us to 82, that monster season you've already heard about, and 1983, which kicked off with Sachs winning another Icebreaker and another Spring Sizzler. But before long, he had jumped up to the Winston Cup Series, first with a family-owned car and later with Dygaard Racing. And in his very first start for Dygaard, Thursday, July 4th, 1985, Sachs became just about the only guy that whole year to outrun Bill Elliott on his way to winning the Firecracker 400. His native Long Island rejoiced that day, but we rejoiced here too, because by then we had considered Greg an adopted New Englander. Incidentally, that Firecracker 400 set up one of the great New England moments for Greg. The very next night, a Friday, he was due at Stafford to drive a modified for Hall of Fame car owner Art Berry in the Ferrara 100. Naturally, word got around that NASCAR's latest upset winner was coming home, so to speak. So Stafford, as you might expect, drew a larger crowd than usual, and in those days the Ferrara 100 was a popular event anyway. Well, along comes Greg, rolling into the town of Stafford Springs, and before he gets to the track, he finds himself in this massive traffic jam. Nobody's moving. So not wanting to miss the warm-ups, he hops out of his car, jogs to the track, and rather than encircling the entire facility to get to the pit entrance, he walks right through the front gate to the surprise and delight of the grandstand crowd. It was one of those storybook occasions when a night at the track feels just right. Busy with his obligations in the Cup Series, Sachs ran just a handful of races in New England after that, including a few more with Art Berry and some with another Hall of Fame car owner, Mario Fiore. But by then the modified division had a new crop of drivers on top, guys like Mike Stefanik, Reggie Ruggiero, Jim Spencer, Mike McLaughlin, Jeff and Rick Fuller, and others. Like the song says, heroes happen when you need them, and Greg's magic few seasons in our neighborhood had been a spectacular bridge from one group of heroes to the next. He's quite a hero himself, and with that, it is my pleasure to welcome into the New England Auto Racers Hall of Fame, Mr. Greg Sachs.
What a special night. Bones, you're my man. Thank you so much. You know, there's been a lot said about the media tonight, and I just want to say that it's warranted. I was so welcomed in the media. I was embraced by the media. It's really what helped me to propel my career all the way through New England and on into the Cup and on to actually, you know, make a living at racing. I mean, it was pretty damn awesome. But I want to start tonight by thanking and acknowledging so many of the people that made this happen for me. Because it's not about me, it's about the people that got me here. Because that's just how it happens in racing. And first would be my wife. Vicky, 40 years, and behind the scenes, supporting me, and my 3 beautiful children who are here with me today. So you know how special it is for me. And Rachel told me, be sure to cut it short, Dad, because I got a flight to catch, so I gotta try to speed it up a little bit. But, you know, Bonesy talks about the career and the accomplishments, but like I say, it was the people. And when I started on Long Island, just so you know, there were invaders that came to Long Island and came to Islip. And it was the likes of Richie Evans and Buzzy Stevens and Ronnie and so many others, and they were all fast. But, you know, 2 of those guys that were on the podium with me at Westboro, what made it so special, and one of my favorite pictures, it is not all the national championships. But when I first went to Islip and started to compete there, and these guys would come in and invade, Bugsy and Richie, the 2 of them, they had something special. And it was the way they floated the car into the turn on the outside, faster than everybody else. But I look at it, it was like aggressive finesse. You know, and how you tie those 2 together is just magic, and it's a beautiful thing, and that's why they were so successful. And I think what took me a long time, and it was the support of all these owners here, was to learn some of that. You know, I went on the bull rings, but when I ventured across the pond, I didn't have a lot of success with my cars, and it was the bigger tracks, and I didn't have that finesse that I needed yet. And working with a lot of these guys here is what gave me that. You know, I want to pay tribute to Lee Owlett, who's since passed, Lee and Candy. That race in Westboro was probably the most important race for me to be here today, and even to move on to Cup and everything else, because that was the first time that I didn't drive my own car, and that I drove for somebody else. As a matter of fact, it all goes back to my family, because, you know, Vicky supported me all through the time, but when my children were born, and we looked at this, we said, you know, hey, you know, I work all week and I earn money and I spend it all on my race cars, but you know, I'm going to be responsible now and I'm going to sell these cars and you know, we're going to raise a family. Well, the phone started ringing, but nobody wanted to buy my cars, and it was Maynard Troyer who told me about some opportunities that I'd had out there, and that's when everything kind of changed for me. And it went from that hobby that we spent a lot of money on to, gee, Vicky says, you know, maybe you do have something special that year, you know, and you know, it's been all the way through like that. So, you know, from Lee and Candy and the guys with that team, what they did for me, and then to go to Cow's Mouth and win some big races, and it just started to steamroll from there when a good friend of mine, Ernie Wilsberg, who Bowens had mentioned, came to me and he says, hey Greg, he says, you know, Cal's not gonna run again next year, so if you'd like, you know, I'd like to start a team, would you run for me? And I told her, I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to do that. What do you think, you know, what kind of car do you want to get? And he looked at me and he says, I don't know, he says, what do you want? And I told him, well, I think I'd like to have a Troyer car. He said, all right, so we'll fly up there and we'll meet Mr. Troyer. And I said, well, what kind of engine will we get? And he said, well, what do you want, Greg? And I said, well, I think we should try one of these Jack 10 engines. Another couple of engines from this area had had a lot of success with Jack 10 engines. So Ernie said, well, you know, we'll fly down and we'll go see Mr. Tan. And this story just kind of went on and on and on, all the way through the culmination of our team, where we didn't so much as have a screwdriver that wasn't brand new. Now you talk about an opportunity for a race car driver that had kind of been on his own, made his own stuff, and always felt like he was just a step behind the top echelon of cars. And you always had to like overdrive a little bit, which didn't always produce the best results, you know, but it was spectacular, as my friend Mario would say at one time, but that was a real big change for me, and Ernie gave me that opportunity, and I was so blessed to have that, and compete with so many wins and get that championship. You know, and it was guys like in the championship at Stafford, they talked about, they made a new rule because they blamed me for it. You couldn't change tires, but it wasn't my fault. You know, we changed tires and won the race, but it wasn't me. It was Mario's fault. It was Reggie's fault. I'm leading the event, and it's about, I don't know, 50, you know, 25 to go, and I see Reggie is gaining. So I'm trying to go a little harder. And I see my left front tire is starting to grain, and I'm slowing down a little more, and Reggie's coming a little harder. Well, now the right front tire is starting to go, and the caution comes out. I know that I'm not going to win this race. Reggie's going to kick my butt behind. You know, it's over. And I went to every race for one reason, and that was to win. Right or wrong, I didn't know the pace part. I knew about going fast and trying to win. And it was that time I just went on the radio. I said, I'm pitting, give me 4. And it was kind of something that kind of stayed right with me through Winston Cup. Just give me 4. That's what I want, 4 new stickers. And they did it. We came back. We won the race. They made the rule. But like I say, again, it wasn't me, it was Reggie and Mario that caused that, not me. You know, when I talk about New England, I want to talk about some of the great families. And it's a term in NASCAR that I think is overused, because I don't think we're one big family. I think we're a community of great families. And it's obvious from Martinsville that wasn't exactly a family, you know, last week. But when we talk about Stafford, the one thing that Ernie Wilsberg did for me, more than letting me have everything I needed to compete with, the best question he asked me was, where do you want to race? And my answer was, I want to run Stafford. I want to run Stafford every week. I want to run Thompson. I want to run the big shows. The most competition, the best drivers, the most money, and the best tracks and fans are over there. Let's go try to conquer that. And that was the best opportunity he gave me. When we talk about going to Stafford and families, we talk about Jack's family, the Root family. And they were so special. And the people behind the scenes, Ed Yarrington and Brooksy, and all the people that ran that operation. I can remember nights there that were just amazing. And then to go from there to Thompson and to have the great people up there, and with the late Bill Slater member and Karen, and they all opened their arms to me and welcomed me so much. You know, there was one time it was the early 80s. And I don't know exactly when it was exactly, but in closing, I just want to share a short story about that. And it was when I really started to feel welcome at Stafford. I'm at the driver's meeting, and Ed is up there speaking, and I'm listening. So you know it was early 80s, because later I didn't really listen that much, but it was in the beginning of my career. And I'm intently listening, and all of a sudden I hear some laughter behind me, and I look around, and it was Ronnie Bouchard and Georgia Summers, and they're laughing and got me carry on. And I turn around, and I look down, and there's Bugsy. He's got a forest fire going to give me a hot seat, right, a hot foot right there at the driver's meeting. And I'm jumping up and down, and it's like crazy. But that was the day that I was really felt a part of the guys there, you know. And you've heard some stories about Bugsy before tonight. I mean, he was quite a character, and that kind of made me feel like one of the group, you know. It was really, really a special day. But my family being here, and all of you, Art Barry, I don't want to forget Art Barry. Art Barry did some great things with me, and he gave me my last win. It wasn't here in New England, but it was at Riverhead. It was the last time I raced Riverhead, and he gave it to me. And let's see, Danny was third, right? So along with my family, I have my extended family, Dan Giovanelli and Andrea Giovanelli, with me here today. So that was pretty cool. And having finished third in that event was pretty cool too. So Art, thank you so much. It was great times being with you. And that's about it, guys. I'm so humbled and honored to be here. And it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for all the people here, all the history. I couldn't have done it myself. Thanks so much.
Well, I always knew Greg Sachs had the hottest right foot in motorsports. Now we know how he got it. It was Bugsy's fault.